Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Voice of the People podcast here on kxnet.com. I'm Nicholas Kwolek, and today we're once again focusing on the race for Congress. Joining me now is one of the candidates for the Seoul congressional seat and former guest here on the Voice of the People podcast. That's Dr. Rick Becker. Dr. Becker, welcome back to the Voice of the People.
Thank you very much for having me.
So how is the campaign going thus far?
It's going very good. It's very interesting. At times it's fun, and at times it's exhausting, but it's going well. We're pretty pleased with things. We have a great reception out throughout the state, and I'm glad we've had the opportunity to have debates. We have another one coming up on the 6th, and then of course Election Day on the 11th.
So for those people who may not be familiar with your life outside of this current venture, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in Mandan, one sister, and my parents still live in the same house I was raised in on Sunset Drive. And I went to UND for undergraduate, for medical school, for general surgery training. I'm a plastic surgeon, plastic and reconstructive surgeon. Trained in Manhattan, Detroit, and Little Rock for my various trainings. Came back to Bismarck then to start my practice all the way back in 1997. So I started my own practice, have a little surgery center here as well. And then I've been involved in other businesses. I've always wanted to try and do what I can for the community, to bring things that I've seen throughout the United States that are fun and exciting. So I started the first Medi Spa back in 2000, and then we had a small plates restaurant known as Humpback Sally's in downtown Bismarck. That closed during COVID, and we have a couple of bars. So I've been very involved in businesses and certainly in medicine. Oh, and I should mention, since we're talking politics, I was a state legislator representing District 7 in Bismarck and Lincoln at the time, and that was from 2012 to 2022.
And I was just going to transition. When did you get when did you first get the sort of political itch?
Well, yeah, interestingly, it was all about the same time. There was kind of a confluence of different things happening. Right around 2008, 2009 is when we were seeing TARP and the financial crisis. And then President Obama-elect was saying he was going to triple down on things. And I was thinking, wow, we're really going in the wrong direction here. And North Dakota was starting to have a tremendous amount of oil revenue, and I thought that was amazing. But then I was seeing that our elected officials were just sort of spending what was coming in. I'm thinking, well, that doesn't seem right. And I just decided, you can't just sit around and complain. You really should try and do something, do what you can. And so it just so happened that I was in a district that was newly formed after redistricting. And so it had no legislators, and so I threw my hat in the ring, and then that started the whole thing.
The last time I think you and I actually met in person was after your run for Senate. It seems like not too long ago, but it couldn't have been that far back. So why did you decide to run now for Congress?
Well, I retired from the legislature, didn't run again from the legislature in 22, and I thought, well, I put in my time. I put in a ton of effort. I accomplished a lot. I felt really good about my time as a state legislator. Even for the statewide run, I felt like we, gave a voice to the people. We held elected officials more accountable. We did good. I can proudly hang up my hat. But it just is a nagging thing. America, I don't think, is on the right course. I think we're in a very, very precarious position, especially with our debt, how we're interacting with other nations, the southern border. There's so much going on. Because I follow politics, there are people out in Washington, D.C., I think are doing the right thing. They have the right principles. And if there were just a few more people that could join them, they actually could start to turn things around. There would be enough of them, they would have the leverage to get things done the way we ought to. And so I thought, well, okay, we're gonna give it another go. I'm gonna do what I can. I feel compelled. I feel called to go out and try and make a change.
So as you know, our primary is coming up here pretty soon, June 11th. And you also know that it's a little bit of a crowded field on the Republican side of things. Tell me let's go back for a second to the NDGOP convention. What were your plans going in, and how did you adjust your strategy that night and going forward since?
That's a great question. So I was there as a delegate. I could not be there as an elected official because of rules they made.
Right.
As seeking the endorsement for Congress, that was not. So I had many people, supporters, say, "Hey, we should try and change the rule, going through parliamentary procedure, try and get the rule changed." And but I actually said I don't think we should. Number one, it takes 2/3 vote, and that would be extremely difficult to get. But number two, I knew what the rule was when I got in, and so we're not gonna try and cry over spilled milk. We're just gonna accept what it is. And so my plans were simply to go as a delegate. That's the end of the story. Now, I also had supporters saying, "Well, I am not interested. I don't want to vote for Julie. She's Julie Fedorchuk is the more establishment supported candidate, and I don't know this other person, Alex Balas, who's also running, and so I don't know what to do. I'm just going to write your name in." I said, "If you write my name in, they're not going to count it because a lot of people think, well, you could do a write-in campaign. That's not. It just doesn't count." And what it came down to, long story short, is I said, "Go ahead and write my name if you don't feel comfortable with the other two candidates." That's what happened. But then there was this other little switch in the rules that said, I shouldn't say a switch in the rules. There was something in the rules that nobody I talked to was aware of until the time of voting, which is if you write someone's name down, the ballot doesn't count for that person, but it still counts in the total. So what happened then is so many people supported me and wrote my name in that neither of the other two candidates got a majority of the votes. And so they couldn't win. And so I got up and just said, "Hey, all of the people supporting me, don't write my name in anymore. Let's not stay here all night long. Either vote for Alex or vote for Julie, or just don't vote at all. Then there will be a majority." And that's kind of how the night went. And then Julie, I don't know, quit or pulled back, and then Alex got the endorsement.
So despite the fact that probably a lot of people were upset at all that happened, what do you think that says about the amount of people that put your name in?
Well, yeah, I have a strong grassroots support. The people, the conservatives that are involved and that are concerned about the direction, they're strongly in my camp. There's no doubt about that. Had I been able to run in the convention, that would have been the year to win it. We would have won the convention, no doubt about that.
Now, you're talking about strong support. Meanwhile, not too long ago on your X page, social media page, you had said, quote, "Dark money groups are spreading lies to try to confuse voters," end quote. It's shameful. Do you know who's behind this so-called dark money?
Well, the group is Brighter Future Alliance, run by Pat Finken. Pat Finken is he's been running that Brighter Future Alliance for at least 4 years now. And what they do is try and take out in Republican primaries, they try and take out the conservatives to make sure that the establishment folks or the old guard Republicans maintain control, maintain power. Pat was he was the campaign manager for John Hoeven. Again, the old guard Republicans. They're very much, they don't like the idea that their club could be effectively dismantled by grassroots conservatives. And so that's where that's coming at. And they're Pat Finken and Brighter Future Alliance, their lies are always the same thing. What they do is they find a bill. For example, let's say Trump's border wall. They say I voted against Trump's border wall, which is crazy because I'm in favor of the border wall. But in 2019, we had a resolution where the legislature were telling our congressional delegation to fund the border wall. Well, when that's fine, that's great, except 12 days before our vote, our congressional delegation, the Senate, already voted on various amendments and a final spending bill, which had stripped away all funding of the border wall. So then it seemed to me ridiculous that we would send a message to fund the border wall when they already voted on spending that took that funding away. So to me, it was gamesmanship. It was just theater, political theater, and I just didn't want to have a part of it. Now, Pat Finken says, "Okay, see, you did that. You voted that way. Those are both true things." But then he misrepresents and says that means that you are voting against the border wall. So he says, for instance, I'm anti-farmer. He says that I am they anti-law enforcement, which is crazy. And so the key, though, is that he's trying to hit low information voters with repetition. He's very much a believer in if you say a lie frequently enough, it becomes the truth. That's his approach. He's done it to many other conservatives in the state, and unfortunately, it's continuing on with my campaign.
Mhm. Now, at the same time, on your social media page, you recently posted a cameo video that got a lot of attention. There was a featuring transgender media personality Dylan Mulvaney, who said, sounding as though she understood that Julie Fedorchak was pushing only green energy and was, quote, going to the DC Zoo to be working with rhinos, end quote. Why did you pick Dylan Mulvaney to make that video? And why would then the Lignite Council endorse Fedorchak?
Well, so two different questions. The cameo video, the cameo I'd never heard of. My team brought it to me and said, "Hey, wouldn't this be a crazy, funny idea if we found a far left um, star? That's what cameo is. These B-lister stars that will say what you want them to say, usually like a birthday wish or congratulations or something like that. If we found someone to congratulate Julie for going to wanting to go to DC to work with rhinos." And so I thought, well, that would be funny. And then they found that this Dylan Mulvaney, the transgender activist, was on there. It's like, well, you can't find someone more representative of the far left than that. And so we spoofed Dylan Mulvaney to say, congratulations, Julie, on working for green energy because of Julie's support for wind and that, and then the DC Zoo working for rhino. So it was crazy. So we spoofed Dylan to do a fun troll on Julie. I got so much positive feedback on that. People thought it was the funniest thing in politics that they've ever seen. So it was fun. Oh, and then your second question, why would Lignite Council? Well, part of the thing is, where we use the Dylan Mulvaney thing to highlight Julie's support of the renewable energy. She says that in her words that it's an important balance to coal, and of course coal is on the ropes because of the propping up and subsidization of wind energy. But I'm sure that to clarify, Lignite Energy Council has supported Julie. I mean, she's the lobbyist for representing all of what they're interested in. And so they made it clear. I suppose Julie's campaign said, "Hey, you guys need to help me out." But yeah, I spoke with them directly in person with Jason Bohr from Lignite Energy, and yep, I understand they have to do what they have to do. Julie's a public service commissioner, and but even the president of the Lignite Energy Council said that he knows that he said, "We know that you voted with coal 95% of the time that you've been in office, and we know if you get elected, you will be a friend of coal." And that's true. So they picked their person, but that's just the way it goes.
Now, I want to go back, if I may, Dr. Becker, to a moment ago where you referred to the old guard versus the new guard. Can you define, in your opinion, what you regard the old guard is? And I presume you were part of the newer guard trying to make a little bit of a difference?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the problem with labels, right? What does it mean? Is it consistently applied and so forth? But we have effectively a lot of times old guard, or we say establishment. And then of course, if grassroots starts to win seats and for a few years, and then then I guess they're the establishment, right? But what we're talking about are two types of Republicans. We have two factions of Republicans, and that's the way it is in many states, and it's the way it's been for many decades. One group, the old guard, the country club, rhino establishment Republicans, view the Republican Party as more of their club, and you need to pay your dues, both uh, um, rhetorically well, anyway, you need to pay your dues and you need to be active in the party, and you have to wait for your turn, and you need to play nice with all of the people in power. You vote according to what leadership wants. You do what, and that turns out to be more of the big spending, big government Republicans, and they're very, very concerned about maintaining power. They want to keep other people out. Hence the rules. For instance, you and I talked about the rule about preventing someone from running at the convention if they ran as an independent. There are several rules put in place, fence building rules, to not allow grassroots conservatives to come in. And so then you have the grassroots conservatives that are saying, look, what we care about are the principles of the Republican Party, the platform of the Republican Party. We don't care as much about the structure. We don't care about the rules. We just want to further these principles. And so it's a I think a much more impassioned group because they believe in ideals versus this club that they're people are very comfortable with, having been in there for 10, 20, 40, 50 years.
So let's fast forward. Let's go past the primary and let's even get past November. Let's say you are elected to Congress.
Yeah.
What is priority, or what would priority one be, day number one for you?
I like that question, and I always I not to get too wonky, but I like to clarify, because when you talk to candidates running for Congress and you say, what are you going to do day one? Well, people that are running tend to sound like they're running for president or running for governor, where they're an executive and they can do A, B, C, D. Man, I'm going to get this done on day one.
Understandable.
If we're and no fault of your own. I mean, it's a good question, but we have to remember that as an elected congressman, we're one of 435 people. So you can wish you can get all these things done. Man, you're going to deliver that red meat for the constituents. But in reality, you have to understand what things are like on the ground. Now, in reality, what I'm going to do on day one is band together, have meetings, identify those people. Many of them are going to be in the House Freedom Caucus that are like-minded, that want to get a rein on this overspending, that want to stop adding to the debt, that want to curtail inflation, that want to secure the southern border. There are people that have been vocal, have been voting properly. I want to meet with them and say, look, I want the same thing. I want to stop voting on omnibus spending bills that we don't have time to read. This is what I believe in. This is what I think we can do. Help me understand the parliamentary rules so we can make this happen. I want to work with you guys. We're going to get this done, because, we can say, hey, I'm going to close the border. Well, a congressman can't close the border, but what a congressman can do is stand by principle consistently, work with others who believe the same thing, and force Congress to do the right thing as a whole. That's what I plan to do.
Mhm. Tell me, what have you heard as far as your fellow North Dakotans about what they want you to tackle, or some of the concerns they have when you've been out campaigning?
Well, the number one and two concerns are spending and inflation. They're tied together. Some people say spending specifically because they're worried about debt. Some people are saying inflation because of how it's affecting us in our daily lives and crushing us. But really, those two things are very closely related, combined, in my opinion. Our overspending, I think, is the biggest contributor to the inflation that we have. And then the border. Now, it's interesting because even in just the last 6 months, the people are very, very concerned about the southern border, the fentanyl that's coming in, the human trafficking, the illegal invasion. Um, they're very, very concerned. But what I've seen is it's morphing into, hey, what about our northern border? We are and just yesterday I was in Grand Forks for the Judiciary Subcommittee hearing on the border crisis and the northern border. And what we're seeing is that uh, we're, if we don't do something about the northern border, we're going to be behind the eight ball very, very soon, and we're going to see that the northern border is a very significant problem. So the border, whether southern or northern, spending and inflation are the things I've been hearing consistently over and over and over.
And I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I would imagine at one point someone must have spoken to you about some degree of the political divisiveness that we've all been sort of seeing over the last 8 years or so on. So to what extent do you believe it's your responsibility as a potential future congressman to help reduce some of that?
Well, I don't. So this may sound odd. I don't think I had. There's not any my responsibility is to remain true to the principles that I have, that I told the people when I was running, and the principles that they have because they elected me. Now, what my job is to further those principles. Now, sometimes that is going to mean being a bull in a china shop, and a damn the torpedoes, take no prisoners kind of attitude. Other times, to further those principles, it's going to mean working with moderates, squishes on my side, and even crossing the aisle and working with Democrats. The whole point is to further the principles of freedom. That's what I need to do. And now, just as I've shown for the 10 years as I was a state legislator, I can be a bull in a china shop, but I also can work with people who many might not feel would be typically aligned, but we can work together. I've worked obviously with my more moderate leadership in the state legislature to pass very significant bills where if I was not able to work with others, I would never get those passed. And we have a number of great bills, even specifically confidential informant reform was one where I worked with Democrats as well as conservatives to get that passed. So um, I would like to see less divisiveness in our civil society. I would like to see that. But as far as divisiveness in Congress itself, you have to remain true to the principles, and compromise for the sake of compromise is a terrible idea.
But as far as working across the aisle, you're obviously not opposed to that, correct?
Oh, no, I want to do whatever it takes to get these principles forward. More freedom, less spending, less government in our lives. It's better for everyone. And when I work, if I work with others to make that happen, I will be happy to do that. If it takes me standing alone, I will do that. Whatever it takes is what I'm going to do.
Mhm. If by chance you don't get past the primary or the general election come November, what are your plans after that?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Nicholas. I am probably very likely done with politics. I've got other things. Believe it or not, this is not something. This is not my first uh, choice. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, it's my choice. I'm running because I think it's necessary because I want to try and make America a better place for my kids and grandkids. Right? As much as that sounds like political BS, it's the truth. For me, selfishly, it's not what I want. And so if I don't win this race, I'm then, as I said right in the outset of the program, I had thought I hung up my hat. If I don't win this race, I will hang up my hat. I'm going to pursue other endeavors that I find much more relaxing and enjoyable.
Okay. And going forward, as far as staying here in North Dakota, you have obviously we've talked to you a little bit about the unfair property taxes. Where does
Mhm.
that stand thus far?
Well, we're still gathering signatures. I think it's going to be fairly close. I feel confident we're going to have enough signatures. The question is, are we going to have enough after the Secretary of State throws some out? I don't know how big of a cushion we need. So we won't know the situation with property tax. We have to have them turned in by June 29th. Okay. And then, so I wouldn't imagine we would know around the 4th of July on whether that will be on the ballot in November. And that's where that stands.
Okay. And as far as presidential candidates, your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I'm supporting President Trump. I assume it's going to be Biden and Trump. I never thought Biden would make it this far. I thought they'd have someone else in, whether it's Gavin Newsom or somebody. And then I thought that would really upset the apple cart because I think if it's Trump Biden, Trump's going to win in big fashion. If they threw in like a Gavin Newsom or somebody else, I've heard a couple of other possibilities. Then I think that throws who knows. But it's important. I hope that we are going to see President Trump in there. If we're going to see, I hope that he also learned some lessons from his first go round on who to trust and who not to trust, and the fact that there was a large apparatus, some call it the deep state, that was working against him because what he was doing to decrease regulations, decrease taxes, what he was doing on the international stage, putting America first is exactly what we need.
Mhm. Of course, the other big, there are a lot of obviously big decisions for North Dakotans to make, namely governor being one of them.
Mhm.
Governor Burgum is leaving office, hence why you have the election. And what advice would you give, having worked in the state legislature, for incoming leadership?
My advice is to focus only on what you believe. And hopefully you're running for office because you have very strong principles. And I'm so redundant talking about principles, but it's really the driving force. If you're running for office, it should be because you believe in certain things that are better for society, that are better for your community, that are better for your state. And then you should always abide by those principles. And there are going to be so many times where you're expected to compromise on principles. Remember, compromising is okay so long as you're not compromising your principles. And I think if you follow that basic, simple rule and not even consider whether it helps or hurts your chances for reelection, then you know you're doing the right thing. Plus, it frees you up. I can tell you as a state legislator, when my fellow legislators were consternating over a bill that, if I vote this way and then this, and my superintendent's going to be mad there, and this person, and I was just like, hey, this is easy. Everyone knows how I'm going to vote on this because I don't take those things into consideration. Everyone knows this bill that contains this, they know how Becker's going to vote. Now, that might make me boring, but it does make me consistent. So that's my advice to anyone running for office, whether it's for governor or whether we've got new people running for the legislature, and as importantly, possibly more importantly, people running for city and county commissions. I mean, these are the folks that really are affecting the average citizen on a day-to-day basis.
And also, Dr. Becker, for those people who haven't really given much thought yet, this is May 30th. We're shooting this on. This is going to air on Monday, June 3rd. What would you say to people who are sort of undecided yet to who they're going to vote for possible Congress, as far as on the primary ballot anyway?
Yeah, so people have, this is really good. People have in this congressional race number of choices. We are in a situation where you don't have the usual, gosh, I have to plug my nose and vote for one of these two. I'm not fond of either. You have a slate of 5 people that run the gamut. And so this is good. I believe that I am clearly the choice for someone with conservative values, someone with America First values. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Julie Fedorchak, she's a known quantity as the Public Service Commissioner. I do believe she's the more moderate. That's what she was saying in the beginning, establishment. So there's that branch. Like if I'm too conservative for people, you've got Julie as an option. Then you've got Cara Mund. She's also she's also a moderate, as she says. So you got Julie as a moderate, Cara as a moderate, but Cara is less pro-Trump and more pro-choice. So there you have that option. Then you have Alex Balazs. Now, Alex is a bit of an unknown quantity. He speaks with conservative values, but we know polling shows that he's at 5% with only 2 weeks left in the race, and he doesn't really have campaign funding. So whether a person likes Alex or not, he's not going to win. So then you have to recognize, well, if I vote for Alex, then how does that affect the rest of the race? Is that where I want to put my vote? And then Charlotte is in there as well. She's another option for people. I think the race is going to come down to Julie or me, with a possible distant possibility of Cara Mund, and that's where it lies. So it's nice people have that choice.
Mm-hmm. And so obviously you're asking people for your vote, I take it.
I am. Well, you know what I always do? You're supposed to, as a politician, ask for people's vote. What I ask people is to do your job as a voter and look at the candidates and know what they represent. And I'm not asking hey, listen, if you think that Cara Mund is the right candidate for you, that's who you should vote for. I represent specific ideals. I represent conservatives, America First, and I have a track record of being consistent, of being strong, of having a backbone. If that's the type of person you want in Congress, then I'm your guy. And so I think people should vote according to what they understand the candidates represent.
What are you going to be doing between now and the 11th?
Well, we're still hitting it hard. I'm making phone calls. I've went and going around the state. I was just in Grand Forks yesterday. We're going to be hitting in the next couple of days Stanley and Williston. We've got another Fargo event coming up, 2 Fargo events coming up here in a few days. So we continue going around the state. We continue making phone calls, voter outreach, getting the message out, interviews like this. And yeah, the time is coming quickly. So, but I tell you what, I am looking forward to June 12th, no matter what.
Okay, well, Dr. Rick Becker, I really appreciate your time. I know all the candidates have had pretty busy schedules, so thanks for taking the time to speak with me today.
Yes, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching the Voice of the People podcast here on kxnet.com. We'll be back soon with more on the questions and answers affecting you, because remember, it's your voice that matters, the voice of the people.